Premier Doug Ford and other premiers had a closed-door emergency meeting with the Prime Minister tonight following Donald Trump's threat of imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. Canada's finance minister saying after the meeting that the parties agreed to work in a united and coordinated way. Meanwhile, Ford spoke to reporters right before heading in, saying a plan is needed immediately. Lorena Redekop has more.
It's all of the premiers from the different provinces and territories meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about all of these issues that we've heard about, with President-elect Donald Trump promising to add 25% tariffs. Now, before that meeting started and before he spoke to the media, the Premier was talking with various law enforcement officials, people from the DEA, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, as well as Canadian border officials, and also the OPP. Then he spoke to the media, and here's some of what he had to say.
We have to take the threat seriously from President Trump. When he says we need to tighten up the border, we need to tighten up the border. We need to tighten up the border on both sides, and the federal government needs to have a plan. We don't need a plan a month down the road. We need a plan now.
And he said he's not convinced that the federal government does have a strategy yet. He says he wants them all to be working together and come up with that strategy. He talked about things such as fentanyl going across the border and also issues with illegal immigration. Interestingly, the Mexican president, that's a country that has also been threatened with these 25% tariffs once Donald Trump comes to power as president. She also posted on social media saying that she had a conversation with Donald Trump and seeming to say that she is also working on these various kinds of issues, both countries, Canada and Mexico, taking this very seriously. We also heard from the Premier talking about tariffs and whether 25% tariffs should also be added by Canada. Here's more.
If they're going to put tariffs on 25% of the goods crossing the border, we need to go back and put 25% tariffs. But let's hope that never happens. There's no reason for that to happen.
Now, clearly, this government would like this to be all resolved first. I also spoke earlier today with the Economic Development Minister, Vic Fedeli. He's going to be heading to Washington next month, and he has repeatedly talked about this charm offensive that this government wants to be putting on when it speaks to U.S. officials. That was before, when we had heard about Donald Trump wanting to add tariffs, but nothing mentioning this high number of 25%. I asked, what's different now with this language changing?
I don't know that much will change. We'll continue I called it before, the charm offensive. It might be a little tighter now, but I think our plan is to continue to talk to the states, remind them that 9 million Americans wake up every single morning just to make products to ship to us. So there's a lot at stake for the Americans as well.
But saying that charm offensive is becoming a little tighter.
That's our Lorena Redekop reporting. And the Premier's office released a statement tonight. It says, in part, I express my hope that this evening's meeting is the start of a more proactive approach from the federal government, including by showing that it takes the security of our border seriously by cracking down on illegal border crossings and stopping the transport of guns and illegal and illicit drugs, or risk the economic chaos of Trump tariffs. The province is also looking to introduce steeper fines for companies that repeatedly break safety violations. The new legislation also aims to bolster protection for people working on active highways. Lane Harrison has more.
While we were staying there having a coffee, a vehicle came into the closure that had been in place for over an hour and hit the truck I was standing in front of at over 130 kilometers an hour. So I was thrown approximately 30 to 40 feet. I am lucky to be alive.
Julie Henry knows firsthand how important workplace safety can be. She was working on Highway 400 when she was hit about a year ago.
When my foreman found me, I wasn't breathing. and my head was bleeding all over the highway.
Henry joined Labour Minister David Piccini for an announcement about a bill that would provide more protection for Ontario's roadside workers like her. The bill would see an expansion of rules for motorists who drive past labourers under the Highway Traffic Act.
Our new bill will require motorists to slow down and move over for road workers, like they do for emergency vehicles. Penalties for violating these laws could include fines of up to $2,000 for your first offense or $4,000 for your subsequent offense.
Henry says new rules are needed, as many drivers show little respect for orders to slow down from roadside workers.
We all know traffic travels much faster than the posted limits, but people don't realize that what we do as a construction company, we are there to protect the highway, to make it working for the public to be able to travel, and no one pays attention. That's the reason that this incident happened, because that highway was closed and the individual decided that he needed to go through it.
The bill also proposes steep minimum fines for companies repeatedly convicted of safety violations after a worker is killed or seriously injured. A company convicted of such a violation twice within 2 years would be subjected to a $500,000 fine. Currently, there are maximum fines, but no minimums. Piccini says these will be the highest minimums in the country. Recent data shows WSIB Ontario approved 94 claims for deaths resulting from workplace incidents in 2023.
And I'm telling you, a fatality cannot be the cost of doing business. Not in my Ontario, not in your Ontario, not in anyone's Ontario.
Piccini's bill includes a host of other initiatives aimed at workers, including expanding cancer coverage for firefighters and providing 16 weeks of job-protected parental leave for parents who adopt children or have them through surrogacy. Piccini hopes to get the bill passed through the legislature before it breaks for the holidays. Lane Harrison, CBC News, Toronto.
Police have identified a suspect that shot at numerous vehicles on Highway 401 in Mississauga. OPP releasing this poster of Troy Ledrew. He is considered armed and dangerous and was last seen on Faskin Drive in Etobicoke. Police are asking the public not to approach the suspect and call 911 immediately. OPP say they received numerous calls around 5 a.m. yesterday that a suspect was shooting at passing vehicles on the 401 near Dixie. Police say the suspect then stole a vehicle and fled the area. The stolen vehicle was located abandoned a short time later in Etobicoke. So far, more than 10 people have reported their vehicles being struck, but no serious injuries were reported. Peel police say they're increasing their presence in the Cooksville area in Mississauga, particularly in a plaza that has been the site of much criminal activity in the past year. As Dale Manukduk reports, police have been called to the plaza at Dundas and here, Ontario, for everything from trespassing and public intoxication to drug trafficking and stabbings.
Since the start of 2024, Peel Police have responded to over 170 calls for service in Cooksville near here, Ontario, and Dundas Street.
I was assigned that patrol area, and even at that time, there were the common issues: drinking in public, loitering, trespass concerns, and drug activity. And that seems to be the trend.
Police say most of the issues center around this plaza, which houses a few cannabis stores, nail salons, immigration services, and restaurants. There's also this unit, which has large concrete blocks in front, something the local councillor says were meant to stop an illegal pot shop from operating.
It took me like over 3 years to get it shut down, and we couldn't do it the traditional way, so we had this unorthodox way of having to board it up. But all that happened, unfortunately, was that they just took their business outdoors. So this plaza has been problematic for a long time.
Since the start of the year, Peel Police say they've issued 40 notices related to liquor and trespassing. They've also arrested 20 people related to controlled substances and seized $30,000 worth of drugs.
I don't have specific numbers, but I'm pretty sure a whole bunch of them are out on bail. And because our justice system takes so long to prosecute them, they're out on bail for a long time, and then they are reoffending.
There's also been violence, including this stabbing 4 years ago, and over the last year in the surrounding area.
There have been 2 incidents where individuals have been stabbed during an altercation. Fortunately, they survived. The victims survived their injuries, and that. And as well, we have a reported incident which a firearm was drawn and pointed at a victim, and we suspect that to be an attempted robbery.
Police say the issues could be socioeconomical and related to mental health, addictions, and homelessness. Several of the plazas have police signage posted indicating officers can and will enforce trespassing. They're advising the public if they see something, say something. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Mississauga.
Peel Police also giving an update today on the arrest of a man alleged to have sexually assaulted at least 3 women in the GTA and did so while pretending to be a rideshare driver. As Nama Weingarten reports, it's believed there may be more victims.
Police have charged a 22-year-old man with kidnapping, sexual assault with a weapon, and by strangulation. It's alleged he posed as a rideshare driver, luring young South Asian women to his car.
That female was waiting at that bus stop.
Police say the victims were taken to a secondary location and sexually assaulted.
These were incredibly violent, reprehensible acts perpetrated against our community. And the charges, they're shocking, but they are representative of what happened.
There are 3 incidents we know about so far, with police telling us the first 2 both happened in the same morning of November 8th, where the young women were waiting for the bus to go to school or to go to work and were allegedly picked up by the suspect and then sexually assaulted. Now, police tell us the 3rd incident happened just roughly a week and a half ago, where again, the same scenario rolling out. A young woman waiting to take the bus in Brampton and then allegedly getting picked up and sexually assaulted by the suspect. Police tell us that in 2 of the cases, the women were driven to a secondary location in Brampton, where in another case, the woman was driven all the way to Vaughan.
Based on our investigation, the way that the accused was operating, we definitely believe there are other victims, and we're concerned that they haven't come forward yet.
Now, as for the suspect, police are saying he's a 22-year-old man who recently arrived to Canada from India on a student visa. Now, even though he was arrested in London, Ontario, police tell us that they don't believe he was enrolled in school there. And as they continue their investigation, they're still trying to figure out if he was actually enrolled in school anywhere here. And of course, as that investigation continues, they're encouraging anyone with information or any other victims to come forward. Nama Weingarten, CBC News, Brampton.
Peel Police have arrested 2 men accused of an armed home invasion. Officers say the suspects bound and confined 2 adults in the home with a baby present. Greg Ross has those details.
It happened in this residential neighborhood in Mississauga during the early afternoon hours of November 18th. 2 men knocked on the door of a home here on the Lakeshore Road West and Lorne Park Road area. Police say the 2 suspects were posing as local service workers, but when somebody opened the door, they pulled out guns and they forced their way into the house. There were 2 adults and a baby inside the home at the time. The adults were tied up by the intruders, who demanded valuables. Fortunately, an alert neighbor came to check in on the home, and that was enough to scare these robbers away. They fled to a nearby vehicle that was being driven by a 3rd suspect. Police say it didn't take them long to identify the 2 men that they believe are responsible for this home invasion.
Our investigation was pretty quick due to the circumstances. We ended up arresting 2 individuals for this horrendous home invasion.
Police have arrested 29-year-old Zain Alibin Al-Kalebi. He was living at a federal parole facility at the time, serving out a sentence for previous gun convictions. In addition, he had multiple gun prohibition orders against him. Also arrested was 27-year-old El Farouz Salih. He was out on bail at the time for previous gun-related charges. Both of these men are now facing a number of new charges for this home invasion, including robbery with a firearm. At this point, police have not identified the 3rd suspect who was driving the vehicle that they fled in. Greg Ross, CBC News, Mississauga.
Welcome back. Sheridan College is making some major cuts. The school announcing it is suspending dozens of programs in light of a significant drop in enrollment. Clara Pasica has more on what this means for faculty and students.
Here at Sheridan College's Hazel McCallion campus, students are trying to figure out what a slew of announced cuts means for them. The school has announced that 40 programs are being suspended, another 27 are under review, and there will be layoffs.
Even the professors we have, it's like they're all such lovely people that I wouldn't want to see a single one of them gone. So
it's like the cutting off immigration The work permit things, everything is getting tough nowadays because of number of students are increasing. Everything is stressed. Everyone is stressed out right now.
Programs suspended range from paralegal programs to business administration to engineering programs. We had the chance to speak with the local union president representing multiple workers here, and he had this to say.
One of the ways they tried to save the system was by importing international students who did not have a freeze on their tuition, as this government put on us about 10 years ago. And so without a freeze and with higher tuition fees, the system survived, actually started thriving. But now the international number of students has been cut down, as you know. And so this is what led to this straw that broke the camel's back.
Now, many post-secondary institutions say that they're facing challenges after the federal government announced a cap on the number of student visas for international students. At Sheridan, they say that they're expecting a 30% drop in student enrollment, which they say will have more than a $100 million impact on revenues. Now, for its part, the provincial government says that it's already investing this year $1.3 billion to stabilize the sector. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Mississauga.
Using birth control for bird control. That's what Toronto is doing in an attempt to control its pigeon population. The birds can be quite the nuisance in public spaces, so the city is implementing a new plan, installing feeders with special feed. Alicia Chiasson has that story for us.
In cities, pigeons come with the territory. There isn't a clear estimate on how many pigeons Toronto has compared to other big cities, but we do know
people find them a nuisance. And so there are, a lot of them, and people complain about the excrement.
Yeah, it's mostly business owners complaining about pigeons doing their business in front of their businesses. So the city is installing special feeders like this one at Nathan Phillips Square.
How does it work? So it is on a timer, and it'll dispense the food at sunrise because we want to make sure that they're coming every day, and that's when they're sort of awake to start to eat, and we want them to eat our food first.
That food is laced with birdie birth control.
It's a contraceptive for these birds so that they can still lay their eggs, but they won't be fertile, so they won't have chicks, and then it means that the population will decrease by attrition. So it's a really humane way to try to control these populations.
Spain has been using these feeders for a decade. Here they are in action. That's the sound of the feed being dispersed. The pigeons know to flock here at the same time every morning to get their fix. In addition to this feeder, Toronto has 4 others placed on top of towers throughout the city.
Idea of the cost of something like this? Yeah, so it's about $500 per month per feeder that we're using. Yeah.
The pigeons seem to be okay with that.
Yeah, they do.
They weren't always rugged street birds.
They're not really wild, right? They're mostly domestic, and so they've been abandoned. They came here from Europe a long time ago, so they're not many of them are wild birds. They're mostly domestic birds that have just been abandoned. So it's kind of a feral population.
We won't know the full impact of the pigeon population pilot project until a few more birth cycles happen. And I wouldn't be a journalist unless I got at least a quote from the affected community, right?
Excuse me, what are your thoughts on family planning? Anybody family planning? Pigeon family planning? Not a peep.
Alicia Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, we have Chris Potter here with more on the forecast. And Chris, we started November with pretty mild weather, but the cold is kind of catching up to us, isn't it?
It does finally look like we're getting into a more typical pattern for this time of year.
Yeah.
I don't want to say we've been spoiled almost. We've been well above normal temperature-wise through October, November. Things are starting to change, though. So in terms of the forecast, we'll start off with those statistics, the almanac, if you will. 4.5 degrees is the normal daytime high. We were seasonable today. Mix of sun and cloud. We are starting to see a lot more cloud build in as the system will be traveling south of the lower Great Lakes. So that's where the organized and steady, potentially heavier rainfall will reside stateside. We escape with a chance of showers through the overnight, maybe some wet flurries mixing in as temperatures start to decrease. As that clears off towards the east, it becomes a big snowmaker for the American Northeast and in towards Atlantic Canada. But when this spin of low pressure kind of gets stuck, another one towards northern Ontario, that continues to give us a colder west to northwesterly wind. And this time of year, the lake waters are anywhere from 7 to 11 degrees. So as the colder air moves across the open waters below, with the right wind speeds, we get into lake effect snow. So this isn't going to dominate the entire forecast region. Toronto will likely escape with passing flurries from time to time, more of a visual distraction than anything. But, it's in the snow belts, east, southeast of Georgian Bay and across Lake Huron. It's not only going to on-go for Friday, it's going to continue into Saturday, and it's going to continue into Sunday and possibly even Monday. So in terms of snowfall potential, although once again, it's not going to be targeting the GTA, it looks like we might escape with maybe a light dusting primarily on grass, not necessarily the roadways because the pavement will be warmer, so it melts on contact. But you look at Grey Bruce County, especially over higher terrain, looks like 20 to 30 centimeters, quite possible. So this is good news for those who love skiing and snowboarding because so far, Blue Mountain tried to make some snow, but it's just too warm. So they'll have a potential of Mother Nature providing some snowfall as well as them being able to fire up those snow machines. 5 degrees your high for tomorrow. It does look like we'll escape with a mix of sun and cloud for the most part. We'll start to see a little bit more cloud for Friday. Highs near 1. Once we get into the late afternoon and evening, we do once again have that opportunity for some flurries. Once we get into Saturday and Sunday, very similar conditions both days. At times mostly cloudy, perhaps a couple of flakes, but it's in the traditional snow belts, Kelda, that we get into the snowfall. And then by Monday, mix of sun and cloud, highs around 2. So things have changed. As I mentioned before, I went golfing last week.
I know, I was going to say, this is not ideal golfing weather for you. Good for the skiers and snowboarders, but golfing may have to wait a little while. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, Chris.
Until next season.
Exactly. Oh, I'm sorry. And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, everyone.